welcome to our participants, welcome to our guests, welcome to the virtual business luncheon today. We're just going to give it a few more moments for everyone to be able to log on and for the system to let you all in. We should be around 30 plus today in terms of registrations, so pretty nice crowd. Yeah, so I think we can get it started. Welcome to our business luncheon today with OEM Fabricators. I'm very much looking forward to hear Christian's story on how OEM Fabricators got connected to European companies and especially also German subsidiaries here in the United States, and what challenges and hoops you had to go through in doing business with those companies. I had a sneak peek at your presentation already, and I'm really looking forward to that. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping, just like every time. All of the participants are going to be muted during the presentation. You will be able to ask your questions. To do so, just raise your hand. You see that in the function window, or you type your question into the question box. And after Christian's presentation, we're going to either put you through or read your question to Christian so he can answer that. Also, whenever we put you through, just briefly introduce yourself and then ask your question. It's always nice to hear who we are talking to. As always in the business luncheons, we'd like to get to know the audience a little better. So we've got those 3 poll questions. Those who join us and joined us before should be used to that. In the background is Franziska and Kim. They're going to take care of the technology. So Franziska and Kim, can you start with the first poll question? Awesome, there we go. From where are you tuning in today? US, Germany, or other? Cool, and oh, there we go. Do we have the results in already? Franziska and Kim? Let me just, oh wow, yeah. So we've got 15% from, sorry, got something in my throat, 15% of our audience tuning in from Germany, and the others from the United States. Awesome. Next poll question, please. And there we go. Have you ever run into any intercultural communication issues at work? Pretty plain here, a yes or no, not at all. Great, and I think we got the results in here. Yeah, 83%. I almost assumed that we're going to have results with this direction. And last question is, have you ever heard of OEM Fabricators before? Alrighty, we got the results in here. I just need to, oh, 41. And 41 have heard from you before, Christian, and 59% no. So really looking forward to that. Before we go into the details and into the topic, let me introduce Dave Nissen to you. Dave from PKF Mueller. Dave is, and his company are the ones that, with their sponsorship here, allow us to have the entire season, the entire year full of those business luncheons. Dave, thank you so much, and I hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you, Mario. Hey, every time you ask me, you're so nice to ask me to give the introduction to the speaker, and I really appreciate that. But I was thinking about what I wanted to say, and I wanted to really say thank you to the GACC, because COVID has been tough on all of us. COVID has been a difficult situation, let's face it. And We've all had to kind of redirect and change the way we operate, including the German American Chamber of Commerce. And I got to tell you, like, I'm kudos to you guys, Mario and Mark. You know, it starts at the top. You know, Mark and his team and you, great team, because we get communication from you, we get emails, we get, you know, everything. And I think that's kudos. You know, we didn't, you know, COVID didn't hold you down. It didn't hold you down. But it didn't stop this virtual luncheon. You know, we love being in Maggiano's with you guys, and we would have loved to have Christian with us having some Italian food. But you know what? We still are having it. And I said it last month. We have 15% of the guests are from Germany. That wouldn't have happened if we're in Maggiano's, right? It would have been zero. So kudos to you guys. I just wanted to say that. And you guys probably don't get the kudos that you deserve, and you do deserve it. So
Dave,
I wanted to.
thank you.
What?
Thanks a lot.
You guys deserve it. So I wanted to introduce our speaker today. We're really, and it's great that almost half the people have heard of OEM, but Christian Gaussman. I got to work on my German, Christian. I have to work on my German. I'm getting there. I'm 8% fluent. 8%. So Christian is the head of strategic operations for OEM Fabricators. It's got locations in Wisconsin, beautiful adjacent state of ours, the great state of Wisconsin. And I'm just interested in hearing your talk. And I was one of the ones that if I could have voted, I can't vote on those panels, I would have said I don't know anything about you guys. So I'm really interested in hearing about your presentation. So Christian, welcome to our luncheon.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, I will I'll show my screen here. Hopefully everybody can, oops, on the back end of the PowerPoint. Scroll up. Oop. All right, can you see my PowerPoint here, hopefully?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd like to start by thanking the GACC as well with the opportunity here to introduce OEM to those who haven't heard of us. I'm hoping that the 40% are not all OEM team members that said they've heard of OEM, but we'll see. We appreciate the opportunity. We've been members of the GACC for about 2 years now and enjoy the networking opportunities. And this is one positive I would say out of COVID is the virtual luncheons for somebody like me who's up near St. Paul, Minnesota, being able to attend and join that network a little bit. So we appreciate the opportunity. We appreciate everybody taking the time to listen today. Hopefully it will be informative, maybe interesting, hopefully, we'll see, but I'll tell you OEM's story and who we are. I had a German MBA student that worked with us, you might be listening, Dennis, if you're here, was very insistent that a PowerPoint should start with an overview, which I think is a German way of doing things. So, and kudos to that. Here's an overview. I'll talk about myself briefly, OEM Fabricators, kind of who we are, our history of working with German companies, the current focus on German companies, and some lessons learned, and then time for questions at the end. So, Christian Gaussman, Director of Strategic Initiatives for OEM Fabricators. From a professional perspective, I've got degrees in manufacturing engineering and business. My professional career has largely been here at OEM Fabricators. I've been here for 16 years. I actually started as an intern with the intention of getting a little experience and then moving farther north where there's better snow. But I never left. It's a great place to work. It's a great company. And it's had a lot of opportunities. So I've worked in quality, manufacturing engineering, design engineering, plant management in this low to medium volume manufacturing environment. So that's kind of where I come to this. Not a lot of international experience prior to the German businesses we'll be talking about here. Travel a little bit internationally, but other than that, limited experience. On a personal level, I am a Wisconsin native, probably your stereotypical Wisconsinite. As you can tell by my name, German heritage, like 40% of us in Wisconsin. I grew up on a dairy farm. Again, what else do you expect from Wisconsin? And then I would say I actually have flannel that I wear in the fall when it's cold out. So I am going to be that stereotypical Wisconsinite that you think of. I live in rural Wisconsin, a small farming community about 45 minutes from St. Paul, Minnesota, with my wife and 3 daughters. And I am learning German. So that'll be something I talk about later in the talk here. But it is something that's helped improve our German business, but also on a personal level, it's been kind of fun to get back to those German roots. The only word that's lasted through the generations is Gesundheit in my family from the German language. So that's a little bit about myself. Moving on to OEM. We were founded in 1986, so we're 34, 35 years old in Woodville, Wisconsin. 230 square meter facility. So I changed this for the audience today. I think that's about 1,500 square feet, give or take. Our founders, Mark and Jim Tyler, are the 2 guys on the right-hand side of your screen. They have since retired. Jim about 10 years ago, Mark about a year ago. But they were working together in the Twin Cities at a hoist overhead lift manufacturer in the 80s. The direction at that time, and still in some instances, was to just assemble and outsource all of the welding, machining, painting, etc. And they realized they didn't have much job security and then moved out here to Wisconsin to start OEM. At the time, just 3 team members. Today, we've grown to 3 facilities. There's a map on the right-hand side that shows roughly where they are in Wisconsin. It's 13,749 square meters, which I think is 200,000 square feet. Just shy of 300 people, and we primarily provide welded, machine, and painted components to an international customer base. But also part of the story here is it's primarily been supporting North American assembly locations. So OEM story, I think, will be a little different than many, and working with German customers, we're a little unique in what we do and what our path has been. Our mission, I thought this was a good description. There's a few things that tie into our German customers here. We serve original equipment manufacturers, so we service the concrete truck manufacturer, the oil and gas exploration manufacturer, and we service them with their parts. We don't do aftermarket parts, nothing like that. It's generally the new ones. The only service parts we make are for those original equipment manufacturers who are also selling service parts to their customers. We do not have our own product. I want to make that clear as well. So we don't have anything of our own we sell. It's all our customers' designs. We work with them to improve them sometimes, but it still is their information. We offer a broader array of core competencies in advanced manufacturing. We have highly skilled team members. I want to highlight this a little bit. And this kind of fits well into that German engineering, German manufacturer. We have very talented welders, machinists, painters, etc. That's really what has allowed us to be successful in the German market. That focus on the talent that they have fits well with your traditional German manufacturing, and that's really where most of the credit should go for the growth in the German market. Without that group behind us here, the sales guys and myself wouldn't be able to grow the market because they do all the hard work. So I want to make sure that we're pointing that out, giving them credit for that, as well as pointing that out as an important reason why we've been able to serve German customers. And then we always focus on growth and innovation. We were talking briefly before the meeting here in regards to robotics, and we are low volume, so we've got some struggles with robotics and automation and them fitting on our company, but that's an area we're growing in among some others. So we do keep trying to keep up with the times and be innovative and use new technology as it comes along. I also mentioned, I've got a note here on our priorities. These are not OEM like documented priorities here in the sense of quality, on-time delivery, and price. It became very clear when I started here 16 years ago that those were the priorities in order. Quality is critically important to us. We build safety critical parts, parts of cranes, parts of fire trucks, where if they fail in use, people can be injured and killed. So quality is very important to us. We don't measure parts per million like many manufacturers because our volume is too low. We measure percent acceptance. So 99% of the time, our customers get our product and have no problems with it. In our industry, that's far ahead, exceeds our competitors. We hear that from a lot of our customers, that our quality is second to none. On-time delivery, we're generally about 90% on time, so we also perform very well there in regards to when you get a part that you requested from us, you can actually plan on it for your assembly facility, and it'll get there when it's supposed to. So our operations group does a phenomenal job in those two areas. And price for us, we want to be competitive. We need to be competitive. We're not a low-cost provider. Low cost is not our competitive niche. That's not what we do, but we recognize we need to be competitive as best we can. I also want to draw your attention to the one-stop partner logo in the bottom corner here. I want to talk about this for a minute. It's kind of jumping ahead, but in regards to customizing information to our German customers, our logo for the US is one-stop shop. We found with our German customers that didn't really resonate with them. They didn't understand what it meant, so we had to change that to one-stop partner so that it explained a little better. Shop for us is a workshop. I think it also is in Europe, but it also might mean a shop where you go buy things, a retail store. So they really didn't understand that, so we customized that as well to this market. But it talks about it in the areas of our business: design, fabrication. If you look at the little arrows, some are upside down, you can't read. But design, fabrication, machining, welding, finishing, and assembly. So that's the facet of services we offer. Typically most competitive when it needs most or all of those areas. The next slide here shows our major industries: railway, mining, construction, and miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is kind of catch-all for a lot of different industries, but really these are the big three that you'll see. When I started with the company, and for the first 5 years I was here, construction was phenomenal, off the charts, until 2008, 2009, when obviously that changed for everybody. And so these change from year to year, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's cycles, business cycles, but generally these three that we're seeing stay on the top of that list if you group those customers together. And then a few pictures of product, and then I'm going to move into the interesting part, the German part of the business. Just want to show some samples so you can hopefully visualize the product we're talking about. The upper left-hand corner is actually a broom that we designed with a customer. They needed to articulate and fold up, so we did kind of some design for manufacturing processes with them and work through that. The orange part in the center is a pretty good example of a part for us that gets welded and machined. I think I talked about that earlier. That's our niche, is when they hit more than one resource. So you don't have a welded component getting sent to a machine shop when there's problems and they're arguing with each other, the weld machine shop, on who made the mistake. That all happens in-house. We just argue internally, and then we ship a part out to our customer, and then they're happy. So the upper right-hand corner is another good example of a part here. This is actually for a German customer in this example, a North American location, but a German customer. This is a tank that gets filled full of oil and then some electronics put in it, and then that's the lid bolted and sometimes welded on. So this is another item that's relatively safety critical, has a fair amount of intense inspection and processes involved in building it. And so that's another good example of what we do. The guy welding on the left-hand side, he's welding a boom tip for a crane. So if you think of a crane lifting parts of a bridge, when you're driving down the highway and you see him putting in a new bridge, this is the very tip end of that boom on that crane. So again, you think about the critical nature of the right material, the right processes, the right welds. You don't want that to break in service. The red parts in the center are the back end of a truck. The green parts on the right-hand side are hydraulic tanks that get filled full of oil, so they need to be watertight and leak-proof, basically. And the two parts on the bottom are on the larger end of what we do. Bottom left is a maintenance machine for the rail industry. This actually has a roof that opens up kind of like a DeLorean car door, or I guess a Tesla SUV, kind of the gull wing thing. opens up and they can pull the engine in and out. It's kind of a fun product to see. And then on the bottom right-hand corner is a big base frame for oil and gas compression system, another German customer. So that's a rundown on who we are, trying to give you some explanation so you can understand who we are and our background. So as we move forward into the German world, it gives you an idea of our perspective. So roughly the year 2000, OEM started working with German manufacturers with operations in the United States. This is before my time, so a lot of this work that I'm going to talk about here was already complete and kind of underway. The learning curves had already been taken care of, but I'll highlight some of the differences in European or German norms compared to the United States. So DIN welding, I think that's now ISO welding, but DIN, Deutsch, is what that stood for. I don't know what the I and the N stand for. Basically, it's the welds themselves aren't any different, but the communication, the information being provided, so the blueprint to build this part, generally, as a rough statement, are completely backwards from how we do it in the United States, so complete opposites. So it took some effort for our group to make sure they were thinking correctly, looking at those blueprints. If I also jump down to the first and third angle, in Europe and probably the rest of the world, blueprints are drawn in first angle. In the United States, we do them in third angle. If you were, just use an example for everybody, if you were having your house built and the blueprints were in first angle, but the construction crew thought it was third, and you wanted your garage doors and your garage on the left side of the house, when they were done, it would be built on the right side of the house. So we've actually had times where we've had to take a product and throw it in the garbage because we built it completely backwards, and it was a mirror image of what it's supposed to look like. Relatively small things in the grand scheme of of manufacturing, but can really be a challenge when you're trying to flip back and forth between those two different standards and those worlds of norms. So we had to do a lot of work internally to communicate internally and get people who are trained in these different standards and go through those processes. It was also our first experience with German engineers and operations managers. As I'm sure many people listening realize or have seen, quite often the U.S. subsidiary, at least initially, gets a few German engineers and operations managers from Germany to help that initial facility get started. And that's what we saw with these customers. I've met a few of them since. They actually aren't with those customers anymore of ours, but on a trip to Germany, we had lunch with a couple of them, and they were great guys, really nice. I enjoyed meeting them. And as we walked out, Tom, our vice president, turned to me and said, and I said, man, those guys are really nice. I enjoyed that. It was good to see them. He goes, yeah, they are really great, but man, they were hard on us when they worked for X customer. And really, I think a lot of it was the directness that Germans typically have. And if you're from Wisconsin or from Minnesota, we think people from Illinois are too blunt and direct. So that Minnesota nice really can be a challenge when you're working with a German engineer or buyer. We have found, and in my personal experience, I've had instances where I've been pretty insulted by the German individual. And now, as I've been through this for a few years, I have come to the realizations that they weren't really trying to be offensive. They were just trying to be direct, and that's their culture. So that was a challenge for us as well, and remains to today. As a Wisconsinite, I really have to work hard not using the yes, meaning no. That quite often the tone and how you say it in Wisconsin means, yeah, I have no idea, no interest in doing that, but I'm going to say yes if you go away. Germans do not pick up on that, and we learned that. I've learned that the hard way in a few instances. So 2000, we're doing this work. It's going great. Good customers, good product, relatively detailed as far as quality. I think it improved us as a company doing this work. But in 2010, we had another customer, a U.S. customer, who was selling product to Europe and needed the production, basically the processes, to be certified to the European norms because of some of the safety natures associated with the product. So they needed their supply base to get certified to some of these European standards. So they came to OEM and talked to us about it. And quite honestly, we had to be audited, and we still do today, by a German auditing body. It comes over from Germany to do this audit. Certification of these standards involved increased oversight and detail, more thorough process checks in production, a few experts on our staff in these processes that we didn't have before. So there was some cost to it. And quite honestly, I would say I was not in favor of it. I thought it was a waste of time and we should not do it, and we were never going to make our money back. And karma has come back, and now I'm one of the guys promoting this certification to the world because it's actually been good for our business. So I will say I was completely wrong in my opinions at that time. But we did this project. We did another one with that customer a few years later. So it increased our technical skill set, but generally it was working with Americans. There were some Germans involved, the technical experts, but the commercial end or the business end was still managed by the US customer, by the Americans. So we really didn't have to do a lot in that area, which starts to lead us to the next slide. 2014, 2015, because of the skill sets and certifications we had, we started to get interest from German companies who were moving production to the United States. So whether it was a contract that they had where they needed to produce stuff in the US, or the German suppliers were getting taxed and couldn't keep up and they wanted to relocate, or it was a new product, we were starting to get calls from German companies saying, hey, we think you're qualified to work with us. Let's look about doing some work here. So they were trying to find vendors who had some experience in their European norms. If you look at OEM's focus on quality and delivery, if you look at our technical background, all a natural fit. If you look at the German last names of a number of our team members, feels like even more of a natural fit, I think, to our German customers. But we started to see a lot of cultural and business differences when we started to take on these products working directly with those German customers. So this was an instance where the Germans were driving the ship and there was very little to no knowledge on their American counterparts end. So we were quite often the experts more than the American subsidiaries were on these processes. And not to say we were perfect and we were experts, but we had more experience than the American counterparts of these German companies. But I got a few stories here I'll tell in regards to some of these business differences we saw. So if I try and explain a few things here, I've got quoting process, vendor selection, and quality processes. So, and I didn't learn this until I talked to a Swiss-German guy that we'd struggled with a lot. And I kind of got to the point where I knew him well enough, I just straight up asked him, why are these projects so horrible every time we work together? And he explained to me the vendor selection process that they used. And I think in our size of industry, I assume this is more commonplace. I think in the automotive world, which we don't serve, maybe less so, but or maybe it's normal in the US more than it is in our industry. But generally a German, if they're talking to you, as I've learned, they kind of vetted you before they're even talking to you. They've determined that they probably really want to do business with you. They may have gotten references. They may have really checked out your website or your information, looked at your standards that you're certified to. So when they come to the table, they're pretty serious about working with you. Americans, less so. If I go to an American company, I quite often get to the point of talking to a buyer and they'll say, well, you know what, sounds like you might be a vendor for us. I'm going to send you some prints. Take a look at them, give me a quote. Those quotes are generally, it's generally expected that's a budgetary quote. If this is a long-term customer and we know each other really well, it's a hard quote. But in the first initial stages with a potential customer, you don't know everything about each other. You don't know if you want to work together. So you're just throwing a number out there and seeing if, are we even in the same, are we playing the same game? Are we even close? Or do you build these internally so you've got a different cost structure, or do you buy them from who knows where? So really it's a game there initially of just here's a number, what do you think? Well, you know, you're okay, you're decent. Now I'm going to send you all of our quality standards or the stuff I didn't send before. Take a look through it and then update your price. And so you go through that process, and that's 4 or 5 back and forth, and then maybe you get to the point of, all right, my quality engineer is going to come audit you, and if that's good, then we'll move forward. So that's the mindset we had approaching these German customers. When really, well, at least in the industry we're in, there's a few expectations when you quote something to a German. One is you've read all of the quality standards and you agree to them if you're providing a quote. The other one is if he comes back and says, okay, I want to order it, you fully expect to build the part for this customer. And the third one is you're going to do it in a lead time that works for me. I mean, so the German customers were coming to the table quite a ways further down the vendor selection process than we were. It was kind of like going on a first date, and they were much more interested in us than we were in them, just because we didn't know each other that well. And some of that was, as I talked to those customers, they've got 40-year business relationships in Germany. And they were, and I would say as criticism to those German customers, they were coming to the US expecting that same relationship, kind of that same interaction, which I think was incorrect. But in their defense, Americans quite often don't prepare nearly as much as a German does for a meeting and go through as much detail. So there was error on both sides in those instances. But we had those negotiations, and we had several of them where, quite honestly, they went horrible. The customer came in to our site. We thought the meetings went terrible. They were demanding things in our eyes and saying, I know I'm right, and I know these are the facts, and this is unacceptable. And just really what we thought was very abrasive and aggressive. In some instances, I think that was the case, but in many, it was the cultural differences, it was the business practice differences, it was them being further down the purchasing process than we were at that point. The other thing I want to mention, most American businesses in our industry have their own standards. Most German companies reference international standards. So if they give you a print that references an international standard, you can go get all that information. So the expectation is you've done that and you understand them. In the US, the buyer realizes that if this looks decent, I need to go find all of our standards and send them to you. So there's a different expectation there as far as the information that's available and then the in-depth research you've done. But if I summarize it, it was painful. We knew there was a market opportunity there, but it was not going well. And that leads us to 2017 and some of the work we started to do to align with these customers. So we kind of sat back and we said, we think there's an opportunity here. There's obviously need, but we need to do better. We need to make these projects more successful, these interactions more successful. We need to do a better job at supporting these customers. So I'm going to run through some of the things we did here, and the next slide is lessons learned, and then I'll be done, and hopefully people will have some questions. But the first thing we did is we reached out to the Germanic American Institute in St. Paul, Minnesota. I want to give them some credit to helping us along here. They're primarily they're nonprofit that does language training and cultural training, but a small part of their business, their services are business training. So we brought one of their representatives on site for a 4-hour training session on dealing with German engineers, buyers, etc., a little German history, kind of makeup of what is Germany today, and how the formality they expect in business or they're used to dealing with, the directness that they're used to, and took basically all of our sales, customer service, and project managers, anybody who interacted with these customers, and gave them that training. And quite honestly, if we'd had it before these meetings that went really terrible, it would have been a whole different meeting. So it was late. It was after, I think, when we needed it, but we did get that training, which really pushed us along in understanding some of the things we were missing in these meetings. University of Wisconsin River Falls also did a business training for the local community on Germany. They've since done follow-ups on Canada and Mexico. They had their dean of the College of Business at the time was a German fella. So he was kind of had a personal interest in helping businesses in the area work with Germans. and the International Outreach Center there as well put on that. So that was bringing in professionals who'd worked in Germany, worked with Germans. I think some GACC representatives may have came up as well, and did little training sessions on dealing business, German business standards and how they operate. Through that connection, we were also able to get a German student to come on site and do some practicum studies with OEM. So Dennis Kunkel was a MBA student at River Falls. He came on site, helped with some marketing, some strategic management things we were working through, a number of different areas there. And really what that allowed us to do was have a friendly German, we'll call it, on site, a German that was representing OEM that could kind of give us that view into the German mindset and help us along in that process rather than it always being in a business negotiation. You'd rather learn some of these lessons on friendly terms than somebody you're negotiating with. He was a business student, so his English was very, very good, excellent English. We have tried to do this, however, COVID has kind of put this on hold. Trying to get more technical students, I think there will be a challenge there. Technical students usually have some conversational English, but they haven't focused as much on developing their English. So that may be a problem as we go forward, trying to bring those technical students on site. But when this all gets done, we hope to restart that and move it forward again. Language training, I've done language training with the GAI as well. I've been studying German for 3 years. I'd honestly say I'm at the basic level at this point in time. I still can't do a negotiation in German. I can barely complete a conversation, but the important part there is that it's given me an insight to some of the English that the Germans have chosen when they're talking. The sentence structure, it can sound weird if they're not as fluent in English. So having this German training has allowed me to understand the words they're choosing. They directly translate out of German this way, and they don't really, in the context, they may sound offensive or too blunt, but really in German that would be completely acceptable. So it's kind of helped understand what words a German speaker is choosing in English, as well as that odd sentence structure that sometimes comes through if they're a little less fluent. So it hasn't helped me have conversations in German yet. I mean, it has, but not on a business level. But more so, it has helped understand the choice of words from a German speaker. And that's helped those negotiations as well, because it just makes a little less conflict, I guess I would say, a little less struggle there. I've also started to choose English words that I know a German would use. I don't say I'm going to go on vacation. I say I'm going on holiday. I say I went to university, not I went to college. So just tweaking the language a little bit to try and get closer to the same page with some of those customers has been important as well. And that's come through with the German language training that I've done. We've also been fortunate in Wisconsin. We've got the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. I'm assuming every state has their equivalent. We've attended a few trade missions with the WDC. We've worked through a virtual trade mission last week, which is a very cost-effective way to get some exposure in Germany. What also comes along with these is training on business etiquette and all those kind of things on working with a German company. So there's a lot there that you can gain outside of just the trade mission and the actual like making a connection with a customer, but they offer training and resources there. They also do grants for exporting activities. So OEM is developing a German website and a French Canadian website. We've been growing through localization, as in bringing product from Germany to the United States to build for this market. We're kind of hitting that critical mass where we're starting to see opportunities where we are becoming the primary supplier because the volumes generally in the US on this specific product. We're seeing examples of, can you export a few of these to Europe for me because we got a small project and it doesn't make sense to build a few of them. So we see the next natural step there hopefully being exporting, and there are resources available there as well. So that's the things we've done at OEM to try and align to these customers. I've got one last slide here, some recommendations, and then I think I'm roughly on time here, and I think we'll open it up for questions. If you're looking to grow in this market or any international market, I would recommend studying the business differences from a culture perspective. I am not an international business major. Nobody on our staff is. We are generally rural, small town Wisconsin people. So we've got varying degrees of international exposure, but we don't come from that environment. So I spent a fair amount of time Googling, German business etiquette versus American and whatnot, and there are some great free resources just to Google and find out there that help you get through some of those different expectations. I would recommend, if you're an American company looking to do this, finding a language speaker to support you. We never actually use this in a negotiation because once we'd identified those people, we didn't have the negotiations where we needed it, but it would have helped us in some of those meetings, especially in our experience. If you have older Germans, specifically from Eastern Germany, they were probably taught Russian more than they were English, and it was a barrier and a challenge for us. So Germans speak pretty good English, especially conversational, but it's when you get into the business end of it, it can be hard. The smaller the organization, the more likely you'll need it, and the more technical the discussion. So I would recommend people find a local resource that can help you. It might be through a language school. It might be through, I would look at your local university. There's usually professors there who are multilingual. We can find one who's willing to sit in on meetings for you. Usually a donation to their lab or their facility might help that out. But usually those groups are very willing to help because they just love the opportunity to speak German to some Germans or whatever that language might be. Also look, if you're looking to grow in these kind of markets, your local university can be a great resource. I would recommend that as well. We talked about the student that was on site for us. We're fortunate here in the location we are in Wisconsin. We've got a bunch of universities in Twin Cities, plus in Western Wisconsin, that are able to they have international students who might be able to do internships, etc. Even if they're not working directly on your German target customers, it's good for your people to get exposure to an international experience, I guess, or whatnot, students, and how they might think differently than what we're used to, or talk differently, or whatever. I think that's a benefit just for kind of cultural training internally. And then I'd also recommend to reach out to your state's economic development resources. I mentioned the WGACC here in Wisconsin is a great resource. I assume each state in the US has some equivalent, and that's a good resource to help along these processes as well. And I do have a real brief story here I want to tell, and then I'll be done. Kind of explaining the cultural business differences and how they can impact a discussion. We had a customer come who was talking to us about building a part. So they were going to come. We built a real rough sample. We knew it was rough. It was ugly. It was just something to have sitting on the table so that when they were talking to us, we could point to a part and talk about it rather than looking at blueprints. So we all acknowledge this is rough. This is not very nice. We get this isn't going to be the final product. They came back 2-3 months later, and at that time we built a better version of it. We still didn't have all the correct tooling, so we had to do some kind of blacksmithing to get some things right, or close enough to get a more representative sample. And we knew, okay, this is 80% there. We know it's not perfect, and we had it sitting on the table. And Andre, the German engineer, goes, this is good. You've really improved from last time. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is about a 3. And our jaws dropped because we looked at it and said, okay, if this is a 3, we need to get to 10. We can never build this part for you. We're never going to get there. And Andre read our reactions and he knew something was off. So he said, well, 1 is the best, right? And we're going, no, 10 is the best. What are you talking about? So at that point in time, we realized that in Germany, at least him, I think most Germans, a scale of 1 to 10, you want to be 1. We were thinking scale of 1 to 10, you want to be 10. And it's just those things can constantly trip you up if you're trying to have a negotiation, and it just wears you out. So that's where a little training, a little exposure, plus potentially a translator is a positive thing. That's my story, closing it out. So
awesome. Christian, thank you so much. I just turned my camera on right now. I turned it off. If I had my camera on, you would have seen me smiling all the time because to most of those things I would have said, true, true, that's me, that's me. Born and raised in Germany, moved to the United States. I got exposed to it from the other side, absolutely. And I just can say thank you so much for providing those insights. In lessons learned, I think you forgot something, if I just throw that out. If you have questions, just ask us or just reach out to Christian. Yeah, maybe he has some information for you on how to understand things. But I'm with you, Christian. I'm pretty familiar as of today with the Fahrenheit scale. That is okay, but I refuse to go to inch or the imperial system. I just refuse to do that. This is something I will never understand. But you made a point. It's not just, the different standards and things, and it's also not just a different language. It's just a culture. And yeah, we are seen to be, a little more direct or blunt than others. That can be offensive. So I had to learn it here in the States as well, the hard way. But if you can avoid that, and you mentioned great partners up there that you're working with, GAI University, that can help you with that. Pretty interesting story. With that, I would like to open it for the questions from the audience. And I see we have the first question in here already, and that question is from Kevin Holland. Kevin, I'm just gonna unmute you and feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Kevin Holland out of Kansas City, also a member of the GACC out of the Midwest. I'm curious, you perform such an interesting scope of work. Do you guys perform any welding on your clients' sites, or do you travel to any work sites to actually perform work there?
Generally, no. Most of our production is done here, and the product is shipped out and assembled, complete by those customers. So usually not on-site welding.
All right. Do we have other questions? Again, to the audience, just raise your hand or type your question into the question box, and we're going to see that here. Oh, yeah, we have the next one from Terrence. Terrence, just let me find you in here so that I can unmute you. There you go, Terrence Delaney. Looks like I cannot unmute Terrence here. So let me just read the question to you, Christian. Terrence is asking, are you planning on entering additional markets? And if so, what would be your market entry strategy?
One of the natural markets for us is Canada. We don't service that very well just because of how close it is, kind of makes it a national market. So from a location perspective, that's a market we're trying to target. We also are looking at a number of different markets, primarily looking at the competitive dynamics, and because of the China, India, the low-cost country influence, we usually have to seek out work that's more complex and challenging. So we are targeting some industries and trying to figure out who else needs that to help us grow, which will probably be Europe or the US as far as that customer base. We are not targeting at this point in time any other international markets other than Canada and Europe as a whole.
All right, thank you so much. I mean, talking about strategies and future growth, Christian, if I might ask this question, how did the current situation affect your business? What's your take on that? What are you looking a few months ahead? What's your predictions?
It's been a challenge to develop anything new because of the critical nature of our products. It quite often requires a lot of on-site auditing and inspection with our customers, at least initially, either coming from the US in different locations or from Germany and Europe. So the inability to travel has definitely had a negative impact on our business. We've had some projects get canceled or just put on hold. But we've been working through that. We've transitioned into virtual audits in some instances where it's by video, and we might walk out to our shop with a camera. So so the engineer can see what's going on.
Mhm.
We've also put together a virtual tour of OEM to send to some of those clients as well, so they can at least kind of feel like they've seen who we are. We flew a drone through our facility and made a nice video. So it's challenging. It's forced us to adapt and kind of like we're doing today, change how we do things, and we're working through it. But I mean, it's definitely had a negative impact and just slowed down our ability to move forward. So it's been challenging to try and grow this market when you can't see each other.
Yeah, I mean, internationalization, you mentioned it. Do you already see trends, or when you talk to your clients and customers, do you see trends that they're thinking about localizing their supply chains? I hear that all the time. You know, you read it in the papers, you see it online or hear it in the news. Do you already experience that you know, companies are getting serious about it?
We think it's going to benefit us. We don't know yet. We were kind of dealing with that anyway, so it's kind of sometimes lost in the noise if you're already dealing with localization. And you don't even, I don't know if you always recognize something new, but we've had customers who have had pretty serious supply chain disruptions, you know, from product coming from a long distance that's impacted us, because if they don't have the other part, they don't need our part. And so it has, it's definitely, I think, has some increased focus right now, but we think it'll help us, but we don't know long term where that's going to end up.
All right, gotcha. And do we have other questions from the audience? Let me double check here again. Just raise your hand or type your question into the box. I currently don't see any more here, which actually means that you may did a good job, Christian. So no questions left. Let me just point out one more thing is, Christian, you're also a very active member in our Minnesota chapter up there, and they're doing also a great job right now. I mean, the funny thing is you're based you're based out of Wisconsin, but you're so close to St. Paul, Minneapolis, that you joined our Minnesota chapter up there and very active over there. I assume that our colleagues up there use your help and support a lot when it comes to, you know, dealing with those issues and challenges.
A little bit. I'm still new and getting to meet some of the people, but it's been you know, I guess that is the one thing I should highlight here as well. You know, we joined the GACC specifically to try and increase that network and meet people. So they've been doing a good job with virtual networking events every month or so, where you can just kind of meet and talk. So it's been great to meet people and make those connections. I did have one younger guy who offers translating teach me the term Hausnummer, which I think is equivalent to us saying budgetary quote. So I learned that and wrote it down. I'm going to use it the next time I give a budgetary quote to a German to hopefully communicate clearly that. You know, so it's definitely been good. And I think I've gained more probably than I've contributed to some of those conversations. So.
Which is interesting. Usually, and if I can teach you something, if you say Hausnummer as a budgetary quote, it usually is connected with this. Can you give me an estimate? Yep. So there we go. No, thank you so much. Christian, in this regard, I also wanted to pass on the kudos that we received from David earlier to our colleagues in the chapters, because I know that they're going to take, or that they're taking good care of you, trying to maneuver through this situation over there. And we're so happy to have you on board. And rest assured, we're going to get back to you soon if we have a need for, you know, a speaker talking from their perspective here in the United States on how Germans are perceived, because we do a lot of those seminars over there in Germany and try to explain to those Germans how the Americans work and function. Doing a final check here for questions and or comments, but I don't see any. All right then. Christian, anything else you want to let us know, you want to bring up?
No, appreciate the time. And if anybody does want to reach out to me, you're welcome to. I'm usually more than willing to talk to somebody with a German interest. I enjoy it. So appreciate everybody's time, and hopefully you learned something today.
And then there is one more thing from me to do. There's going to be a major announcement on our social media channels and everywhere tomorrow. And that announcement involves OEM. So stay tuned. Please follow social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, or whatever. I'm not going to spill the beans right now, Christian. We agreed on that because it's scheduled for tomorrow. I can tell you that when I heard that news, I was very happy. Christian, without further ado, thank you so much. Thanks to the audience for joining us. Stay tuned for additional news. Follow us on our social media channels, and also, if you want to, register for our virtual German American Business Awards Gala that's going to happen next Friday. First time we're going virtual with that one, where we celebrate success stories in German American business relations with several prizes. Okay, then, thank you so much, and looking forward to see you soon. Christian, thanks again.
Thank you.